mouth and use it in that proportion. The point I would say is we need to show mutual respect. We need to do more listening. But the first thing I would have done is to show our support for law enforcement, to show our support for the men and women who, when they leave their families every morning with a badge on their chest, they take their lives at risk. They put their lives at risk to protect ours, and we have to acknowledge that. At the same time, I also think it's important that we acknowledge that the fact that there are people in this country who believe that because of their color of their skin, they're not as safe as everybody else. And the fact that people think that and feel that is a problem in this country. So I think it's very important that we calm down in this country. We start listening to each other. We start talking about solutions. We're already forming a bipartisan group in Congress to do just that, about training, about communities. And we look at those success stories that are out there in our communities and see if we can replicate that. I was talking to a friend of mine, a black pastor in Somerset, New Jersey, Buster Suarez. He and other black leaders in Somerset have already worked with their local police and law enforcement to have an accountability group and to have relationships so that these problems don't occur in the first place. So that there are great success stories and solutions that are out there already. We need to bring them to Congress, to Washington, to other communities, to learn from this and to replicate it so that we can find solutions. Let's start talking about solutions, and I think we just need to calm down and start our healing process.
Let's talk about the state of our union as a nation. President Obama in Dallas today said, quote, "We are not as divided as we seem." Donald Trump, the Republican presumptive presidential nominee, says actually we are divided and it's never been worse. What do you think?
Well, I don't know if I'd say it's never been worse. I think all of us as leaders have an obligation to do what we can to unify people in this country. And we can't just talk unification, we have to act toward unification. I do think our politics have been pretty poisoned. I think our politics have been bad in Washington and around the country, and that we are impugning people's motives. And that we are saying that if you work with the other side of the aisle, that if you try and reach across the aisle to have a good idea, sometimes you're a betrayer or a traitor. And we start impugning each other's motives. I think we have to go back to making politics about a contest of ideas. Start talking about principles and solutions. And I think just doing that can elevate the kind and tone of our debate so we can actually start solving some problems in this country.
It looks as though Donald Trump is going to pick a running mate sometime this week. Obviously, you want to have him pick somebody who is qualified, who could be president if the worst possible thing happened, who has good experience, who has good chemistry. But given all those qualities as a given, what else do you think Donald Trump needs to be looking for when he picks a nominee, in terms of especially whatever policy and political qualities he might need help with?
Well, all those things you mentioned, plus I would like a conservative. I would like someone to assure conservatives that conservative principles will be adhered to and maintained throughout not just the campaign, but throughout his presidency. So I think making sure that you have someone that is familiar with and has a proven record of being a conservative reformer who understands conservative founding principles and has experience in applying those principles, that to me, it makes the most difference. And that's what I'm actually looking for. I'm excited about the pick. I've been involved in this before.
Right.
It's an exciting process for the person about to get picked. I'm excited for whoever that person is going to be. But as far as I'm concerned, all those things you said, experience, can do the job, good chemistry, but someone who is going to advance conservative principles and who has a proven track record of doing that.
That does suggest that you have some concerns about how conservative Donald Trump's root ideology is. Is that fair?
I'd say he's new to this, and he's been on different sides of different issues, and he has good positions now. And most things we have common ground. I just want to make sure that there's going to be consistency. I want to make sure that we're going to have consistent conservatism, and all the more because I want to see our party unify. If we're going to win this fall, it is because we have unified ourselves. And it's important that we unify ourselves around our principles and then the policies that come from those principles.
In the last few days, under your leadership, the House of Representatives has asked the Director of National Intelligence to not give classified briefings to Hillary Clinton, as all presidential nominees get. He said no to that. The House of Representatives...
got his letter today.
You got his letter today. House Republicans are trying to make that happen legislatively. House Republicans are suggesting there should be an investigation as to whether or not she lied to Congress. House Republicans are suggesting there should be an investigation, a corruption investigation into the Clinton Foundation. Now, I'm sure House Republicans are all excited about those measures, but to the people in the audience and at home who think, wow, that's a lot, this seems more like trying to undermine the Democratic presidential candidate and less like a hunt for truth. What do you say? How do you convince them that this is on the up and up?
First of all, the reason we know about any of this, I would argue, is because of congressional oversight. Second of all, we want to make sure that everyone is treated equally. I believe that she has gotten preferential treatment throughout much of her career in that she believes she's above the law. She holds herself above the law, and I think everybody should be held accountable. Here's my point. James Comey, when he laid out the laundry list of things that she had done wrong, basically shredding the case that she had been making for herself all year long, then said, after not saying that he was going to press charges or file an indictment, that usually what's in order here, where somebody mishandles classified evidence so much, information so much, that there's administrative justice. There's an administrative action that occurs after a person like that. That means that person who is proven to mishandle such sensitive information should be denied future access to that information. Now, if she gets elected president, it's a different story. But I'm familiar with what she's about to get. I got this as Mitt Romney's running mate. When you come out of the convention, you get the most deeply classified secrets of our government. You get read into all our very classified programs. It's a very severe responsibility, a very serious responsibility. And I would say that any other person that did something like this, a State Department employee, somebody in the military, they would be held to the same standard, which is they would be denied that kind of information. So I think it goes with saying that we should treat people fairly. No one should be above the rules and no one should be above the law. And that is what we're looking for, is equality, so that we're holding people to the same set of standards. And people, that's the problem with Washington. Everybody thinks they're self-dealing, and they think that people are being held to different standards. And the problem is that's true. And that's the basic point we're trying to make.
One last question from the headlines. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg told CNN contributor Joan Biskupic that Donald Trump is a faker, has no consistency, and she questioned how he's gotten away with not releasing his tax returns. She previously told the New York Times that she cannot imagine what the nation would look like under a President Trump. I know that separation of powers is an important principle to you. How do you, as a leader of the legislative branch, address potential leader of the executive branch?
I find it very peculiar, and I think it's out of place for an appointed branch of government. That shows bias to me. Now, those of us who are in the elected branch of government who get elected to things, I think it's perfectly in the realm. But for someone on the Supreme Court who is going to be calling balls and strikes in the future based upon whatever the next president in Congress does, that strikes me as inherently biased and out of the realm. I think that's something that she should not have done, because I don't think that shows that she's intent on being impartial in the future.
Well, along those lines, do you think if there is a case, and certainly Supreme Court cases, candidates and Supreme Court cases in a presidential administration are common, but you would need to...
Let's go to Bush versus Gore in 2000. That was kind of I remember that one. I think that's why I don't think judges should be weighing on things like this.
You should accuse yourself.
Well, let's see what happens in the future.